Good day to everyone. We are entering a new week. We are entering the 15th week of the expansion. We have a bunch of things to go over that happened in the last few days. We haven't really touched the more recent changes since we were busy mentioning all of the balance changes for 9.0.5. So now we're going over a little bit on what happened recently, starting with a bunch of hotfixes. So there was some drama after 9.0.5 launched. As usual, a new patch comes in and people start finding bugs, problems, unexpected interactions left and right. One of the more damaging unexpected interactions, which I also noticed, and I'm sure many of you will have noticed, was the invisibility potion usage, obviously related most of the time to Mythic Plus. So people would start getting broken out of stealth, out of nowhere, after using the potion. What happened? Maybe I aggroed something, maybe there is an invisibility detection mob in this dungeon I never realized there was, maybe I had a dot on me and it broke me out of stealth, who knows? Turns out the patch essentially broke many mechanics, many systems on your characters, which applied things like buffs or refreshed stacks of buffs on your character. Basically, whenever the buff would refresh, you would get broken out of stealth. So the last couple of days have gone by with Blizzard trying to fix all of these things. You had Inexorable Assault and Cold Dart for Frost Death Knights. You had Renewing Mist ticks of Mistweaver Monks breaking stealth. You had Spirit Wolf passive talent ticks breaking Shaman out of stealth, Maelstrom Weapon for enhancement Shamans, the aspect of the Cheetah speed decrease also breaking you out of stealth, and plenty other things. So over time Blizzard has been fixing all of these. I have to say particularly annoying for a couple of days as you were trying to do Mythic Plus, because many dungeons by now have introduced, I think it's good actually, that the usage of invisibility potions and the usage of skips has become much more standard in your run-of-the-mill pug. I remember in BFA even asking if people add invisibility potions on themselves was like a weird thing. Now it's much more standard, it's much more accepted to go around, enter a Halls of Atonement key and expect, even in pugs, to have a stealth potion to skip most of the trash in the second layer of the dungeon. Similarly, things like Sanguine Depths, the bridge skip and stuff like that. So it was particularly problematic when it comes to Mythic Plus. It is getting fixed though. Now the only performance affecting fix is going to be related to Restoration Shaman. One of the things I mentioned, I'm sure many people mentioned, when Elemental Shaman was getting its retouches for 9.0.5, which have worked quite well so far. One of the question marks was, what about Lava Burst getting nerfed for Restoration? Because Lava Burst was getting nerfed to give Elemental Shaman powers elsewhere. You were just shifting the power of Lava Burst and putting it in Earthshock, in Earthquake for AoE. But Restoration doesn't have those options, so they were basically just getting nerfed in their single target damage. Effectively, their Chain Lightning was also buffed by 35%, but their Chain Lightning is very poor. It doesn't even have the passive that makes you hit 5 targets as Restoration, so you're only hitting 3, which is pretty bad. So now, with this fix, they are going to remove the damage reduction of Lava Burst for Restoration only. As they mentioned themselves, of course, the change was primarily intended as a change to Elemental Shamans, so this is getting removed for Restoration. Now 9.0.5 has brought some more drama to something else this time around. The drama was brought to Acquisition Blazing Ingots and a Dangerous Harvest. So the quest in demo to gather the 12 ingots around the furnace area, as well as the Dangerous Harvest quest, which requires you to pick up anima cones, transform yourself into a little fairy and pick up the cones. People realized, at first they thought it was a bug. At first they thought it was some sort of phasing problems, that happens sometimes. The triggering moment where you find a herb node, you run to the herb node, you click on the herb node, and the herb node disappears. People thought, yeah, it must be some usual Blizzard server problem shit, whatever. Well, turns out it wasn't. Okay, we have to find a new coping mechanism. What's this now? It must be just a bug then. It's just not intended, right? Well, no. Actually, this change wasn't a bug, wasn't an unintended interaction. It's actually planned, because Blizzard came to answer after people noticed this change, and their answer at first got your hopes up, because the message from Blizzard is, we are working on a hotfix for this. And you're like, oh, okay. See, I told you, it was just a bug. It's getting fixed. And then they continue. Once the hotfix is live, Blazing Ingots for Acquisition Blazing Ingots and Anima Cones for a Dangerous Harvest will respawn quickly after a player has looted them. Oh well, so it wasn't a bug, it was actually intended, except now they're going to spawn slightly faster, but they are no longer shared, so you can no longer just follow around other people for these nodes and pick them up together. Just like for your collect the 20 souls quest, right? You just go to Zoval's Cauldron and you just run in circles and you pick up all the souls together with all the other players and you're done pretty quickly. Well, not with Blazing Ingots now. This is particularly annoying because there aren't even that many ingots. You know, sometimes you have to go through the main part of the Zoval's Cauldron, inside, up inside, and you get maybe 5 or 6, maybe 7, and then you have to start running around in circles behind, trying to find them all, and that's if actually you get to share them with other people. So now that you can't even share them with other people, you have to park yourself in front of a spawn and wait for it to respawn. What's it gonna be? We're gonna have queues, player queues like you had in Classic when it was released, for people to wait their turn to pick up an item. That seems pretty outdated. You know, if these ingots were available all throughout the zone with the same density of Zoval's Cauldron, it wouldn't be an issue, right? You would go along, do your weeklies, do your dailies across the Mo, and you would pick up eventually these ingots. It wouldn't be something you would target. It would just come by itself. Problem is, it's not. So this quest is just made more annoying for question mark reasons, really. I don't see the benefit of changing this really at all. Same for animacons, but then again, animacons is a world quest. You know, it's much less important. Although it gives you AP, so it is one of the more targeted world quests, you can say. Still, I'm not one of the people who likes to dogpile on Blizzard changes for the sake of circle jerking negativity, as you might have seen from the previous video. However, this seems like one of those classic Blizzard changes, which just puts like a sour taste in people's mouths for no real reason. For free, really. Outside of these fixes and these possible bugs happening, we also got some more raid changes. This time around, the changes applied to Artificial Zymox in Mythic and Sardenatrius in Heroic. Remember, cross-realm Mythic raiding is open, so interesting, or rather sensible, that Mythic Zymox, one of the early bosses, was nerfed. Zymox has gotten the health reduced overall by 5% in Mythic difficulty, and Withering Touch damage reduced by 15% in Mythic difficulty. And this is actually a particularly significant type of nerf because Withering Touch, coming from the root, the root of extinction, is actually one of the higher damage taken sources from the entire encounter. As the ability itself was previously, I guess, before this nerf, about the 3rd to 4th most damaging ability, outside of the Hyperlight Spark, the one that bounces across all players. Basically, your raid damage, continuous raid damage throughout the encounter. Root of Extinction was a pretty meaningful part of the damage toolkit of Zymox, so a 15% nerf is pretty relevant. Other changes actually happened to Heroic Denatrius. The health was reduced by 9% on Heroic difficulty. 9% nerf, by the way, is massive. It's like quite significant. Then again, sure, up to the first part, when you bring him up to 70%, it's a joke. It doesn't even matter, so it's not that the boss is going to be 9% easier to kill in the last phase. You also get a health decrease in the phase where it doesn't really matter. What is also more relevant, though, in the last phase is that the Hand of Destruction damage is reduced by 10% in Heroic difficulty. So, nothing too much to be surprised about. Getting towards the end of the first tier, you're starting to get nerfs to the boss, which gives you ahead of the curve. It gives you your shiny achievement for, I guess, non-mythic raiders. It is always relevant to remember, everyone, that this expansion is the expansion where we don't really have very powerful scaling. So it is also possible that more heavy, a heavier hand is going to be needed in tuning bosses over the course of the expansion, because we don't have corruptions, we don't have essences gaining higher and higher base damage because of your necklace. You don't have, these endlessly increasing artifact weapons or Azerite necklaces and similar other systems which power you up more and more and more. This expansion, you've got some conduits, some 1% damage increases, and that's it. So it's not that bosses become easier over time just because, like it used to happen in previous expansions. Not to mention things like Titan Forging and the ease of getting gear compared to this expansion. So a heavier round of nerfs on bosses is more justified than it would have been in previous expansions, given our current power situation in Shadowlands. Then there was a clarification. I guess people were confused about this, about the way the Valor works. Again, trying to be a little bit understanding. To me, this isn't confusing at all, but I realize some people don't spend 10 hours a day in and around all of the news about this game, so they might not have kept track with this. Remember, Valor was planned to have 750 Valor cap every week, increasing by 750 week by week. So you would start at a 750 cap. The second week of the patch, it will go to 1500, and then 2250, and then 3000, etc, etc. Blizzard decided to give us a little bit of a help, a little bit of a jump start by starting the cap at 5,000. So the first week, you had plenty of time to get all the way up with 5,000 Valor, which is a very high cap. From the following week, though, it's going to continue as planned. So 5,000, 5,750, 6,500 is going to be the increasing cap. And you can continue to grind your Valor until you reach those caps. In the Blizzard's post, they make the example, if a character earns 1,000 Valor the first week, it means that they can still earn 4,750 the second week, because the cap is 5,750 minus the 1,000 they already earned. If you managed, if you're one of those poor souls who did things like these to try to get their trinket, their best in slot trinket, to no avail, failing horribly, and you capped your Valor, then you're going to get a 750 cap, week in, week out, which is just going to be like what? 3 Mythic plus, 4 Mythic plus, and a few emissaries. That's going to be it. So this was the PSA sent out by Blizzard regarding Valor. Since it's still the first week, people are still not used to Valor fully, but from here on out, it's going to be more clear. So the last part about this new week is going to be the new Mythic Plus. I mentioned before that after our happy day of Fortified, Bursting, and Volcanic, which was a very nice week, Tyrannical, Bolstering, and Storming would have been pretty nasty. Not as nasty. I think the difficulty of last week was alleviated, as I have noticed by many people finding themselves much easier groups, thanks to much more experienced, let's say higher Raider IO level players, going into lower keys because they wanted to farm dungeons for their drops, for their possible, most of the time, trinket drops, so that they could upgrade them with Valor. It wasn't unlikely, you know, for people doing still plus 10 keys, seeing 1800, 1700 Raider IO players queuing up for a plus 10. So even though the week wasn't that easy, at least on the lower range of keys, people got helped thanks to this. This week, though, continues on the difficulty scale, and it's going to continue for another week, by the way, as I mentioned about a month ago at this point, because this week is Fortified, Spiteful, and Grievous. Next week is going to be Tyrannical, Inspiring, and Necrotic, which is even worse than this week and is even worse than the week before that. So you'll have to wait the 5th week of the rotation to get a decent push week, which is Fortified, Sanguine, and Quaking, 2 weeks from now. We're going to go over this week, eventually, in a few days, after we have gone through some keys, after there's been more experience about this. It's always interesting to revisit these weeks, because remember, these were the weeks we have gotten at the start of the expansion. So by this point, the 3rd week of the expansion, we still had the vast majority of people doing plus 8s, plus 10s, maybe getting into plus 11s. There were still few people, way less than now, obviously, completing plus 15s, completing much higher keys compared to what we have now. Yes, in the end, it's going to be easier than last week, because Fortified always beats out Tyrannical in simplicity, and you could say that Spiteful is still significantly easier than Bolstering, especially if you continue the melee genocide of Mythic Plus and you just don't invite many players. The only thing that's left is Grievous. Grievous is significantly more annoying than Storming. Even if melee players get kind of triggered by Storming, Grievous can pose much more of a threat. Storming most of the time is just annoyance to you as a player, to yourself. There are only, a few spots where Storming can legitimately kill you, like for example in the platforms of Theater of Pain, where you can get knocked up as you get thrown off the platforms, or on Gore Chop, where you get pulled in and then you get knocked up and then you die, and similar things, similar situations, but Grievous is just overall more of a threat to your party. In the end, it's likely going to be a slightly easier week than this week we just went through, but still not by much. It's not going to be a very easy week overall. So for now, we're going to stop here. These were all of the most relevant changes, news, and fixes that happened in the last few days regarding this week in Shadowlands. See you guys very likely tomorrow. And in the meantime, it's been a few days already, and I still hear the hunters complaining in the distance.